Hi everybody and welcome to my Good Omens Season 2 Thoughts and Theories video. This is being recorded at least a month after my last reaction. Probably closer to a month and a half. Maybe even 2 months. I'm not really sure, honestly. But there's so much happened in Season 2 that it takes a lot of time to process, as I'm sure most of you have gone through right along with me. But B, there's just so much that you don't necessarily know everything you really need to know, and you have to go down a few rabbit holes. I went down a lot. That said, I do have ADHD, so I'm sorry if this is kind of rambly, kind of ranty, and doesn't always go in order. Also, these theories do not all go together, so some bits may end up being closer than others. Some may even contradict each other, but I've got literally like 2 pages of stuff that I've been collecting since this happened, and I've gone down all the rabbit holes. I've researched the hierarchy of angels. I've read far too many Tumblr posts. I've delved into every area of the fandom that I could think of. Obviously, I have read a lot of fan fiction, but I'm trying to stick to things that feel more or less like they're likely to happen with this being Neil Gaiman. That said, I want to start with coffee theory because I know it's one of the most popular ones out there, and I wouldn't feel right if I didn't address it. I'm not solidly on board with coffee theory because while it does feel like Metatron would absolutely do something that underhanded, I don't think that there was a miracle involved because all the miracle noises I caught during that section are accounted for. That said, I did have one thought regarding coffee theory, and that, which hopefully won't get me flagged on any watch lists or anything, but that led me down an interesting train of thought. We saw what happened to Crowley on Laudanum this season. And if Laudanum essentially made Crowley drunk, who's to say that other poisonous substances wouldn't have vaguely similar effects? Now, the biggest argument in favor of coffee theory is the discrepancy between Metatron's phrasing to Nina when he was ordering the coffee, which I believe was a dash of almond syrup, and what he said when he handed it to Aziraphale, which is a hefty jigger of almond syrup. That seems like a significant difference there in amount. And what do we know has the flavor of almonds? Cyanide. So, I went down a rabbit hole looking up the various effects of cyanide, and one of those is confusion. Also, cyanide is very fast acting. So, in a celestial being, presuming that, like with laudanum, it doesn't have the same effect it has on humans, I can see the possibility that cyanide was added to the coffee, thereby adding the additional amount of almond, and that caused temporary confusion long enough for Metatron to separate Aziraphale and Crowley by getting Aziraphale to follow him up to heaven. That also would account for why he was in such a hurry to split them up, and for Aziraphale's lack of reaction, or at least lack of overt reaction, to Metatron mentioning the Second Coming. Because if there's one thing we've seen in this series, it's that Aziraphale is not a good liar. The man cannot hide anything on his face. And while yes, Michael is a exceedingly talented actor, he's playing someone who can't hide much of anything. And yeah, he hid his relationship with Crowley throughout the years from heaven, at least from the archangels. But we saw from Metatron that there was note of that relationship in the files, just a lot of people didn't check up. And B, that honestly, I think they just got really lucky because none of the other angels or demons really had that much interest in Earth. Because they almost got caught by Furfur, and if it weren't for Aziraphale's one instance of actually doing a magic trick right, that would have gone really badly. Okay. So, and I am going to be referencing back to my notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, is refreshing my memory, because, like I said, ADHD can't maintain one train of thought for very long without going on a tangent. Okay. Moving on from coffee theory. A lot of my other theories are kind of centered around the idea that Metatron is trying to separate Aziraphale and Crowley. And I believe the reasoning behind that is because the two of them doing half a miracle each produced a 25 Lazari miracle. What we don't know, because it wasn't very clear, and I haven't seen anybody ask Neil yet, and I'm not remotely bold enough to message him on Tumblr, is whether the 25 Lazari miracle detected in heaven was just half. Because Shax, when talking to Crowley, mentioned that the miracle detected by hell was powerful enough to have been from an archangel. So I don't know if they're both detecting the full miracle or if each department, so to speak, is only detecting the half that was directed at them. Because Aziraphale said, or one of them said, I'll hide them from your old group and you'll hide from my old group. So, when Beelzebub and Gabriel miracled themselves away at the end of episode 6, well, not quite the end, but right before everything absolutely went to shit, all we really saw was the lights getting brighter, and they didn't, blow any bulbs or anything like that. Yes, it's possible that because it's a Duke of Hell and an Archangel, maybe they were a little more in control and were just not trying to use that much power, but it also highly suggests that the level of power Aziraphale and Crowley have together might be unique. Also, the fact that while we don't have any proof of it yet, because obviously we haven't seen the repercussions of that leave taking, Beelzebub seemed pretty convinced that Hell didn't have the forces to track them down. Now, even when it comes to finding Gabriel when he left heaven, it doesn't seem like heaven is any better off on that front. I mean, as much as I love them, they sent Muriel, a 37th Order Scrivener, to look for the head honcho of heaven, formerly. That seems like they don't have the resources. Now, one thing I'm not... Sorry about the background noise. It's getting close to lunchtime and my son is very, very loud in the background right now. Um, One thing I'm not sure on is where Seraquiel stands. Because I'm kind of split on it. On the one hand, they did let Crowley view the trial, which strictly speaking they didn't have to do. And they clearly had a relationship with Crowley before the fall, even if it was just coworkers. Similarly, Furfur also had a relationship with Crowley before the fall. Crowley remembers neither. Now, here is where I'm split on Seraquiel. They let him view the trial. Despite that, they voted for Armageddon 2.0. I'm not sure if A, Seraquiel wanted to disagree with Armageddon, because clearly they have an appreciation of things like the Horsehead Nebula that they helped create, but didn't feel like they could because they know what Metatron is like, and thus helping Crowley when it came to letting him view the trial footage might have been, surreptitiously trying to undermine the plans of Metatron. Or, and I feel like this is the more likely option, sadly, because I do like Seraquiel. From what I could find on sites that I believe were mostly Catholic, Seraquiel is the Archangel of God's judgment. With Metatron being the voice of God and Seraquiel being the Archangel of God's judgment, it kind of feels like they might be in cahoots. And if so, that would mean Seraquiel is also in on the plot to separate the two of them to prevent them from undermining the end of the world again. Sorry, I know I'm saying a lot. We've seen that angels can be exceedingly petty. And the fact that Crowley couldn't remember Seraquiel, smaller things have caused bigger issues. I can really see an archangel getting very upset about that. Okay, back to the part where Seraquiel and Furfur knew Crowley before the fall. They both expected him to remember them. And either Crowley just doesn't have all of his memories, which kind of makes sense because he did seem to relate to what Jim/Gabriel was saying about, feeling like an empty house. Or, because Crowley has been on Earth for 6,000 years, give or take, and everybody else has been in places that are far less, shall we say, mentally stimulating, their memories are better because they haven't experienced as much. It's kind of like, I'll be drawing a comparison later in this between most angels and demons in this universe and artificial intelligence. Essentially, the angels and demons that haven't worked closely with humanity don't have as much to remember because they have long periods, like what Muriel was saying about, every couple 100 years somebody comes and asks them a question. If you're only seeing somebody every couple hundred years, that 6,000 years would not join as many memories as 6,000 years on Earth. Even with Furfur working in, I know eventually requisitions, but I want to say they called it admissions first. Cheap shots about the number of Germans named Otto aside, it's not exactly something that would stick with you. It's like customer service. You might remember the regulars, but with admissions to hell, there's not going to be any regulars because you only die once. And I'm actually hitting some things I didn't have written down because I didn't even think about like some of these aspects before I was talking about it. But one thing that strikes me as odd about Crowley's memory loss, if it isn't just from having more memories and therefore less proverbial storage space, we've seen Heaven try and take the memories. Well, they would have taken the memories if he hadn't taken them himself of Gabriel now, because Gabriel was an archangel. We've also seen lower ranking demons like Furfur still have their memories from before the fall. If it's not just down to how long Crowley has been on Earth, that means that most likely Crowley knew something that Heaven did not want him to know. And that they did the same thing to him that they did to Gabriel. Like I said, I spent a long time going through a whole bunch of sites on the hierarchy of angels and the various tiers. We know, based on his password access, that Crowley has to be at least a throne or a dominion. What we've seen of him also corresponds really closely to the ranking of virtue, from what I could tell. But that's one level lower than throne and dominion. So after that, the closest he comes to any of the tiers, as far as I could tell, was throne, as they reside in the area of the cosmos where material form begins to take shape. It seems to kind of mesh with him having been in on the creation of the stars. He's the only demon we've seen fully shapeshift from an animal form to a human form. And he seems uniquely flexible with his shape. And I'm not just talking about, changing of hairstyles and clothes as the decades go on. Species, gender, pretty much the only thing that doesn't change outside of when he's changing species is his body type. He stays very slim. And that kind of makes sense because you're working with David Tennant the whole time. And to quote one amazing and soon-to-be returned Donna Noble, he's just a tall drink of alien nothing. The man is almost see-through if he turns sideways. Crowley being a throne also kind of makes sense because everything in his flat in the first season, except one thing, seems to be a reminder of a zero fail, or something he actually needs to blend in. And that one thing that doesn't fit either of those criteria is that really fancy throne-like chair. the fact that they specifically referenced you'd have to be a throne or a dominion or above. I initially was leaning Archangel, like a lot of people. I was solidly on the Raphael bandwagon. Anyone who has watched my reactions probably remembers that. Now, I'm kind of more leaning towards Throne. Plus, with Aziraphale's promotion to Head Archangel, Supreme Archangel, and Gabriel's threatened demotion, it's clear that power levels in angels can change. So, whatever ranking Crowley was before he fell, it feels like, since hell continues to ask him back, and we didn't see that happen on screen, which I find interesting. I'm not sure if it just wouldn't have fit time-wise, or if it was off-screen for a reason. But yeah, the fact that they continue asking Crowley back tells me that no matter what he does, they need him. And they know it. Considering he's not even a Duke of Hell, it seems really important that they pursue him so hard, even though he's basically betrayed them on multiple occasions at this point. I don't know if that's simply an indicator of power or an indicator of knowledge that they think he has, but maybe he doesn't because of the memory loss. One thing I'm not sure on. Crowley and Aziraphale have been on Earth pretty much the whole time it's been around. They've missed out on a lot of political maneuverings in their respective head offices. We haven't seen any particularly impressive miracles from, honestly, any of the higher-ups. Probably the most impressive thing we've seen, and it was Satan himself, was first season when Satan came bursting out of the ground in a spray of dirt and all that. So, two possibilities occur. Either A, not being essentially challenged for 6,000 years has made angels and demons weaker, or B, Aziraphale and Crowley being on Earth and living a essentially full life has made them stronger. Or the relationship between Aziraphale and Crowley itself has made them stronger, because Crowley encouraged Aziraphale to question things, and Aziraphale kind of reined in some of Crowley's more mischievous nature. So, between the two of them, they rounded out the more extreme ends of each other's behavior, bringing them to almost a human level of mix of good and evil. They may not see it that way themselves, but realistically speaking, the two of them are closer to humanity, I think, than they are to their original groupings. They know a lot about humanity. Although, obviously, they're still well capable of missing things, even the really obvious ones. And no other angel or demon we've seen seems to have even a foggy grasp on humanity. Um, I think literally the closest we've come is Metatron saying he's ingested things before and knowing how to buy a cup of coffee. So I don't know whether that connection to humanity is the bigger factor or whether it's the connection between Aziraphale and Crowley themselves. And honestly, without other angels and demons that were exposed to humanity for a similar period of time, I don't think we could find out. Aziraphale and Crowley embrace the full nature of humanity. Like I said, they have both good and bad in them. And honestly, this season with Aziraphale really brought to mind that quote about the road to hell being paved with good intentions. Because a lot of the things Aziraphale did, thinking, oh, by the book, this is something I should be stopping, like the grave robbing, he ended up being wrong about and only realized it because of Crowley. Because he couldn't see the shades of grey. And without those shades of grey, you can't understand humanity. Gabriel embraced the clothing, but he didn't really get any of the other aspects of humanity, not even food or drinks. And when his memory was wiped, you could see Jim was more open to all of that. So basically, the culture, at least with angels, we haven't seen for sure with demons because they seem a little more savvy with what's going on, just in the sense of like Furfur having the camera in the 1940s, and you know, they're kind of staying on top of some things, but realistically, no other angels embrace the emotional aspects, the physical aspects. Just, you know, I'd even kind of wonder whether most angels and demons go to the trouble of breathing. Because they don't have to, right? I don't even know for sure if they have a corporation when they're in hell or heaven. Because it was such a big deal in the first season when Aziraphale returned to heaven without his body. So I don't know if that's just because Discorporation is a lot of paperwork or because of the tight time schedule it was on, but it really feels like while they may have human form, most angels and demons wouldn't even know where to begin on approximating humanity. And Muriel is proof positive of that. Bless them, they are so adorable and naive, but they don't have a freaking clue. Their naivety, though, feels way more like an innocent child than a stubborn bureaucrat. They haven't been exposed to humanity, but they also haven't been biased against it. Since humankind was created in the image of God, all hail Francis McDormand, and since Crowley and Aziraphale are so much closer to humanity than to their respective head offices, it feels like Crowley and Aziraphale have to be closer to a true understanding of God than either of their departments. And maybe that is a contributing factor as to why their miracle was so overpowered. These last couple things are not so much important as just little things I've noticed that might end up being in some way relevant. The box with Gabriel's memories on it, in it rather, has a "This Way Up" sticker on it. Literally, when Gabriel wrote his message on the bottom of the box, that was the best thing he could have done, because by putting a "This Way Up" sticker on it, that just guarantees that every law-abiding, non-rule breaking angel out there, including Aziraphale, wouldn't even think to turn the box upside down. Crowley, on the other hand, having seen it on the footage, but also I feel like just any clue in the direction of the box might have been enough. Crowley doesn't think twice about turning it upside down. And that's what shows the "I am in the fly," which I'm still proud of myself for guessing. Even though I didn't seriously think it was going to happen. And I certainly didn't see ineffable bureaucracy happening. Well, I kind of did, but not like fully. I saw chemistry there, but I didn't realize it was going to go that far that fast. Okay, so this last little point has more to do with the differences between demons when they're in hell and when they're on Earth. And I commented on a couple of these things during the season, but I didn't notice all of them on my first watch through. Some of them I only caught watching other people's reactions, or editing my reactions, or even just rewatching the show. Crowley's eyes are brighter in hell. They look way more gold. Beelzebub's teeth, absolutely disgusting in hell. And Shax's hairstyle. When we first see Shax on that bench in St. James Park, very modern looking hairstyle. But every time we see them in hell, there's that kind of matted, flat to the face look to the hair. When it comes to the angels, I haven't noticed any real major differences between how they appear in heaven and how they appear on Earth. Although I might have to go back through and look and see if, like, because even some of the scenes in heaven this season, Uriel didn't have, like, the gold fleck. So I'm wondering if any of them had, like, their golden bits on them when they were on Earth. I didn't notice that. But I don't think they're really aware enough to make the conscious choice to avoid things like that when they're on Earth. Maybe Beelzebub, but I don't think the others are. I mean, Crowley, obviously. But I don't know what it is about the nature of hell specifically that causes such drastic differences when they're in hell versus when they're on Earth. Alright, y'all. I feel like I've talked everybody's ear off for long enough. If you have thoughts on any of my theories, be sure to leave them in the comments. I look forward to a lively discussion about it, because I'm eager to see what other people have to say. If I've missed anything that might be relevant to one of these points, feel free to point it out to me. Um, and I hope to see y'all in season 3 if it gets greenlit, which I'm really hoping. Now that the WGA strike is over, we're just kind of waiting on the SAG-AFTRA strike. Alright, I'll see y'all in the next one.